Hello there and welcome once again to the Mayor's Magazine. I'm Mick Cornett, the Mayor of Oklahoma City, and this is the Mayor's Magazine for August 2013. Once again, we are going to dedicate a show entirely to Oklahoma City or Oklahoma City area-based authors. We've done this a couple of times in the past and got rave reviews for it, even if our authors didn't necessarily get it for their books. But our first guest is M. Scott Carter. Scott?
Thank you.
You bet. Scott, you're a business reporter for the Journal-Record.
I work for the Journal-Record and cover the state capitol.
And when did you start expanding from your journalistic role into writing books?
I had wanted to write, I've been an avid reader since I was a little kid, and I've wanted to write books for years. And I would start and stop and start and stop. And about 15 years ago, I really got focused on it and started writing. And it took a long time to publish that first one. It was a lot of frustration at times and lots of rejection letters, but it finally paid off.
Tell us about that first book.
It was is set in Oklahoma. Both of my books are set in Oklahoma for the most part. The second one is a little in Vienna, but it was set in Oklahoma. It's about two boys that grew up together, and one was killed, and the other didn't deal with it really well. So he was sent to a treatment center, and there he meets a girl, falls in love with her, and discovers that in the end, the girl is down there recovering from heart surgery, and she's had a heart transplant, and it's the heart of his best friend. So it kind of ties it all together.
Is any of that autobiographical?
Well, the information about the heart surgery was actually based on an experience my wife and I had. Our youngest son was born with several severe heart defects, and so all the information about the girl's heart surgery was taken from my son's life.
And the name of that book?
Is Stealing Kevin's Heart. That came out in
Kevin's
2011.
Right. And your new book is The Immortal Von B, and I have a copy of it here. Tell us about this new work.
Von B is about a young girl. They start out living in Tulsa. She is the daughter of a famous geneticist, and her mother is a pianist. And she accidentally, through a series of mistakes and not listening to her dad, accidentally clones Beethoven and brings him back to the 21st century as a teenager, teaches him how to play the guitar, falls in love with him, and then has to let him go.
Now, where did you come up with that?
That was, the whole idea started, it's really funny, the whole idea started a long time ago when I was going to school at Oklahoma State, and a friend of mine and I were sitting at Eskimo Joe's. We were having a beer and solving all the problems of the world.
Where all great problems
exactly,
are resolved.
And all great ideas come from. And we were talking, and we started talking about music and classical music and things like that. And she said, wouldn't it be cool if you could bring a composer back and let them hear what they never heard? And she mentioned it in passing, and I didn't think anything about it at the time, but the idea stayed in my head. And about 30 years later, I'm driving down the road one day, and I'm listening to the radio, and Beethoven's Ninth comes on, and suddenly it kind of started taking shape. And I thought, wow, that's really bizarre, but it's really fun. So I started scribbling it down at the stoplight, and people were honking and yelling at me. And after that, it went from there.
And, you know, it's not your typical girl meets boy, girl loses boy, girl gets boy back. I mean, it's
girl clones boy, girl. Yeah, it was there was a lot of research. I spent about a year researching Beethoven's life, a year researching tissue replication and cloning and stuff like that. So it's got all sorts of, it's got that in there, and then a lot of history about rock and roll in there too.
On the journalism side, you document what you see, what you hear, what you know. In this side, all of a sudden, your work becomes debatable. People are going to comment on it. They're going to like it, or they're not going to like it. What's that like? That the feedback on your, artistic endeavors that you spent, literally years on the first book, and then to have someone, I assume it wasn't critically acclaimed by everyone who read it.
No.
So how do you take that?
Well, the journalism was good training for that, because I've had editors look at my stories and wad them up and say, go do that again. And so you develop a thick skin. I've had reviews that loved it, and I've had reviews that said, I can't believe this made it in print. And the only thing I take from that is that every author, I think, has that.
Sure.
But I wrote this book that I wanted to write and told the story that I wanted to tell, and I feel good about that. So
now, some authors want to sit down and they just want to write day after day after day endlessly. Some like to write an hour or two a day. And what is your strategy in your work ethic?
I'm more toward a little bit at a time. I start out and I write a treatment that kind of outlines the whole book, and that's usually 3 or 4 pages. And then I leave that alone for a couple of days and go back and look at it and tweak weak spots. And then I start plotting and writing, but it's usually an hour, hour and a half a day. And it's usually either really early in the morning or really late at night when the kids are asleep and the house is quiet.
Do you always write sequentially? Do you always start with the beginning and end?
No, not always. Most of the time I do, but every now and then. In this book, I actually wrote the ending first.
Really?
I wrote the last 10 chapters.
What inspired you to do it that way?
Because I was telling my wife the plot, and she didn't like the ending. She just threw a fit about the first ending I had. And she was reading the treatment, and she was asking me questions. We were having dinner. And so she goes, "You got to do something different. This people will hate you for this if you do that." And so I went back and I thought, well, I'll show her. So I wrote the ending as I wanted it and let her read it. And she still hated it. And so I went back and wrote another ending. And so when I actually started writing the book, I had the last 10 chapters done.
So the idea is you know where you're trying to get to. If you wrote the last chapter, at least you'd know when you were done.
Right, exactly. But it was a strange process for that one.
And is there a third book on the way?
A third book has just been sent to the publisher. It is about a guy who is really, really heavy and learns how to deal with that and changes his life and everything he goes through.
How can we get this book and the other two?
This book is available at Barnes & Noble and online, and it's at Full Circle and anywhere other books are.
The Immortal Von B. And so you say you can download this from Amazon?
It's not. I don't know whether the ebook is out yet. The print version is. I don't think the ebook is out yet.
But regardless, support the local bookstores, and,
yes,
and
sir.
they are carrying the copy just like the one I'm holding right here.
That's correct.
Scott Carter, thank you very much for,
thank you, sir.
for
I
coming
appreciate
in, and good luck with the book, and we look forward to having you back on another episode, and we can bring in your third book.
All right, thank you.
We'll have another author on the Mayor's Magazine right after this.
You know, I give, and it's just never enough.
Seriously?
When people take you for granted, what can you do?
Water the grass, not the street.
Using drought-tolerant plants, watering early in the morning, adding some mulch. It's not that hard. If we want to use our water wisely, we got to squeeze more out of every drop.
SqueezeEveryDrop.com. Oh, I gotta go. I got a date with a lake.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Magazine. I'm Mick Cornett, the mayor of Oklahoma City, and in this segment we're going to continue our show dedicated to authors who live in Oklahoma City or the surrounding area. And in this segment we're going to have Malena Lott. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Grew up in rural Oklahoma, but now lives in the Oklahoma City metro. And what I thought it was interesting in talking to you before we went on the air is, although most authors or many authors might have their works separated by years, you have yours separated by months.
Now I do.
I mean, literally, this one came out in July. This one came out in June.
Yes.
That's almost insane.
I know.
How many hours do you spend writing in a week?
Well, I usually write every morning. I try to have that be the first thing I do once I've had a little coffee in me and I get my juices flowing. Then I like to write for an hour, a couple hours. And then a lot of times on Sundays, I might write during a long stretch. And then, so it just kind of depends on, how the week's going, but I definitely like to write something every day.
Yeah. Now, how would you characterize your work? What subject matter appeals to you as an author?
Well, I was always drawn to women's fiction and just women's lives. And so that's why my first book that came out in 2006, The Stork Reality, was considered mom lit. And so that was a genre for a little while, or like prego lit, because it takes place during the 9 months of her pregnancy. So I wrote that, and then I just decided to go ahead and continue to write, women's stories. And so my second book, Dating Da Vinci, came out in 2008. So that was a little bit more spread apart. And then Fixer Upper, which I set actually in eastern Oklahoma, came out in 2011. And that was a digital first release. And that was the first time I'd done that, because by then ebooks were definitely more popular.
So when you plan to write a book, do you write out an outline of of where you want this book to go, or do you just start at the beginning and see where it takes you?
Well, for Twin Falls, which is a young adult paranormal book, that's a new genre for me. I'm writing a trilogy about messenger angels in Texas, actually. That one I had to plot out more because I needed to build the world. You know, what are the biology of these angels? They have an underground colony in Texas, so I had to figure out what does that look like, you know, under the red dirt, and then all their powers and that kind of thing. So that one, not only just the plot, but just the world building took a lot of time on that. The characterization always comes more easily for me, and that's probably why I'm really drawn to women's fiction, because the characters are so important. And so that's I think I do it, but I like it, and I probably should plot more. That would probably help, but I really enjoyed discovering the book as I'm writing it too.
Well, do you discover things about yourself when you read your own works? Do you discover things about yourself that you didn't necessarily know but put out on paper?
Yeah, I do, and I definitely identify myself in every book that I've written, even when, like, my last two novels are told in multiple points of view. So one goes the three sisters, so it takes turns in theirs, and then in something new that's set in downtown Oklahoma City, it's told by also 3 points of view, but it's 3 different generations of women. So that was a really fun challenge. But I always recognize something from my life, or I'll take something I'm really interested in, like, you know, mid-century modern architecture, and go, oh, how can I put that in there? Or, you know, if it makes sense for the story. And I've always been fascinated with angels, so that's why I decided to do a book about angels.
You mentioned that this is the book
Yes,
set in Oklahoma City?
Something New is set in downtown Oklahoma City.
Something new. So what's in the book that people might recognize or notice about Oklahoma
Well,
City?
actually, I used to have an ad agency, and Nona's was one of my first clients. So you'll see Nona's in there. You'll see several spots downtown that are in the book. And I actually, when the lofts first started coming downtown, I did that tour. And I thought, well, that's where I'm going to place these characters. I'm going to have all 3 generations, so it's 4 women living together in a loft in downtown Oklahoma City. So that's where it first gave me the idea. And then, of course, they're all going through these periods of transition. One's getting ready to get married, one's getting a divorce, and they're all at these different, you know, junctures in their life. So that's why the Something New was appropriate. But
So it seems like most of your time is spent on novels, and then, with the help of a friend,
Yes.
you wrote Dance Mom Survival Guide, and this is all true, I assume.
I know. Well, my daughter is a competitive dancer. She's 13. She dances at Dance Phase there in Edmond, and so her first year, it was just like, what are we doing? You know, the competitions, and then all the costumes, and there's a huge learning curve to it. And so with my best friend, Dance Mom, I said, well, we should write all this down so that we can share it with other people.
We should have a book.
And we should, of course, that's why everyone says, don't be around Malena too long. She'll want you to write a book with her. Or so, you should write a book about that. So anyway, that's how that happened. And we'll probably update it every year because new things are always happening. But it has been very helpful, people have said. So I'm glad we did it.
Do you see any themes? Do you write about life and death? Do you write about money? Do you write about relationships?
Yeah, mine are pretty much about family and relationships, and there's a love story. It's not always a romance, but there's a love story element in it. And then I write a lot about grief, and so the grief theme is pretty consistent throughout all of my novels.
That's a hard thing to write about.
I know. So obviously I have emotional things I'm working through, and that's what is so great about it's very healing. And Family Charms was based on my sisters and I being estranged from my mother for 20 years. And so they get this trip around the world to meet her, which we didn't get in real life. But it was so healing to write about that, you know, because we were raised by my grandparents, and it was wonderful. But you always have that my what if was, you know, where in the world is she right now? Because we didn't have communication with her. And so when I thought of the story, and I think it was about 2009 that I thought of it, and I just thought, what if they got a letter inviting her and say, here's where I've been the last 20 years. So they go to amazing places. I mean, you know, Africa and Hawaii and all that, to see where she's been and really what kept her away, because there was a reason for it.
Do you feel like you're still learning as a writer?
Yes, I think you learn and improve, you know, the more you write, and that's why the best advice, they say, always read and always write. So I'm always reading at least probably 1 or 2 books a week.
Malena Lott, I have 4 of the books here. One of them written under a pen name, Lena Brown.
Yes.
Okay, same person,
Yes,
different
that's me.
title, different authors on the cover. And your books are generally available where?
They are at the local bookstores, Full Circle and Best of Books, and also Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
All right. Malena Lott, thanks for coming on the
Thank
Mayor's
you so
Magazine, and good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
Can't wait to take a look at what's coming out next month off the typewriter of Malena Lott. We'll have more on the Mayor's Magazine right after this.
It's not his new group of friends. It's not the video games. It's not the neighborhood.
Mom, do I have to go to school today?
The biggest threat to your child's future could be you. Every day they miss, even in middle school, puts their graduation at risk.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Magazine. In this third segment of our August show, we're going to continue our show dedicated to Oklahoma-based authors and talk to Merline Lovelace. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Quite a prolific author. More than 12 million copies of your books are in print in more than 40 countries.
Yes, yes.
You were telling me that, my term, kind of a military brat. Is that how you would characterize your childhood? How many different places did you live growing up?
Oh my gosh. I think we lived in 3 or 4 foreign countries and about half of the states. My dad was a World War II vet, and then he stayed in after the war, and so I grew up Newfoundland, France, all over the states. And I think it gave me my wanderlust, so when I graduated from college, I joined also, and so my husband and I have been traveling ever since.
Retired from the military 20 years ago, though, and you made your home base right here in Oklahoma City, living in South Oklahoma City, and the books have just been coming out one right after the other. 95 books. I won't ask you to name them all, but just verify the number. That's right.
I'm working on number 95 right now.
Good grief. Now, how many hours a day do you spend doing this?
Well, when I'm on deadline, it's a full-time job, so I'm usually, the old military discipline, I'm usually at my desk by around 5:30 or 6, and then I'll write till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Then I exercise, and then the rest of the day is taken up in the business end of the business. Writing, there's a lot editing and answering emails and PR stuff, so it's a full-time job.
Yeah, and so when you are a published author like this, you deal on a regular basis with the publisher, your editors. How does that relationship work?
Agent. Well, I was agented for maybe the first 40 or 50 books, and so the agent did all the negotiations and so on. And so my relationship is mostly with my editors, and I've had many different, I write for a number of different houses and lines. So you establish relationships with those editors, and you do, I've been lucky, haven't had to do too many revisions, but any revisions or any, the initial storyline and so on, you work with them.
Do you ever talk your editor out of a change? Do they ever want to say, and you just say, no, trust me on this? Do you have to put your foot down sometimes?
I've been very lucky. I mean, very, very lucky. I very rarely, like I said, have to do revisions, and my editors have been wonderful. Just 1 or 2 that I've had some difficulty with. But
has there ever been a time when an editor gave you an idea and it was really good?
No. Usually I send in my ideas, and they either like them or don't like them. I mean, early on when you start, especially when you're prolific and you get an idea for a book that's I think I was going to do some a raptor healing center, and they had already done a book just recently on that, so they suggested something else. So, but I've usually got more ideas than I ever have time to write, so that's not a problem.
When you start writing books, people comment on them. They like them, they don't like them.
Yeah.
How is that? What's the feedback like?
Well, the first few, that's your baby out there.
It feels pretty personal,
yes,
doesn't it?
Yes, and it hurts, when they don't like your book. But after a while, you develop a real thick skin, and we tend to ignore the bad reviews and then just, feast on the good reviews. So.
Now, you're writing romance novels, I'll call them?
Mostly romance. I also write historical novels and thrillers. I do military thrillers.
And I would guess you get email from women who've read your books and can relate. Well,
yes.
Is there any stories there from people that have just wanted to know more about the characters, or do they want to get involved in the stories?
Oh yeah, I get a lot of that. This is one of my favorites. That's why I brought that. This is
the Hello Girl.
Yes, this is based on actual historical fact. These are a group of women. They're French-speaking American and Canadian women who went over and served with Blackjack Pershing's American Expeditionary Forces in World War I. And it was very personal to me because I was at the Pentagon, and I worked for Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, who one of his offices that approved applications for veteran status for various groups. And these women, I mean, this was World War I. They were over there in France. They wore Army uniforms. They stood inspection. They were subject to Army rules and regulations, but they weren't granted veteran status until 1978. And so I saw this and I started researching it. And so I kind of wrote it for all of the women who have served over the years, and I do that a lot. I do most of my books have some military connection.
Mm-hmm. Is it always told first person from a woman's point of view?
No. In fact, this is the only one I've ever done with first person, and I loved it. I loved doing it. It's very, but usually I do third person, multiple points of view, and so on. I like to get into each of the characters' heads and see what they're thinking.
Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
how many twists and turns can you make out of that very short timeline?
That's why I love the romance genre, because you've got that basic formula, but I mean, you can have wars, murders, anything and everything in between. I've written books set in ancient Rome, in classical Greece, ancient Egypt, medieval romances. I just had one last year that was set during the Crusades. It was a result of our cruise when we went to Israel and
well, I hope
Egypt.
You wrote off the trip as part of a business expense.
All of my travel is research. It is. That's where I get my ideas, is when we travel.
Right.
In fact, this one's Oklahoma City, but this one we were in Paris last spring and I broke my foot. So
Is that in the book?
That's in the book. And most of the things that we did in Paris are in there.
And you said this one is based in Oklahoma City?
This one is Oklahoma City, yeah.
It's called Merline The Paternity Promise.
Yes, this is about two brothers, millionaire brothers, engaged in the oil business, and somebody leaves a baby on their mother's doorstep, so they have to determine who's the father.
What part of Oklahoma City do they live?
They live in Nichols Hills.
Okay.
Well, the bachelors live downtown. The mother lives in Nichols Hills.
How interesting. Merline Lovelace, thank you so much for coming
You're
on the
welcome.
Mayor's Magazine, and I assume your works are available at a wide variety of places, but I assume local bookstores?
Local bookstores, libraries, online.
And I know people will be following up this broadcast to learn more about your work.
Well, thank you so much.
Right. Mayor's Magazine continues after this.
You can say with me, imagine what you'd see if every child had a book to read. So the mission is for us to get a book to each and every child. So let's join hands, book people unite, unearth hidden passion. Come on, we'll have a good time. One book community helps to change a life. People unite.
Read to a child today and spark a lifetime of ambition.
Welcome back to the Mayor's Magazine. In this final segment, we're going to visit with Kim Terry. She is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Metropolitan Library System. Welcome to the Mayor's Magazine.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Now, you've been able to sit off stage, and as we interviewed the last three authors here locally, and I assume their books are available throughout the library system.
Of course they are.
You have a lot of programs in the summer, especially because, kids get out of school, and a lot of parents want to make sure that their kids continue to stay engaged in books, and that's where the library comes in.
That's true. That's true.
What have y'all been doing?
Well, we just finished up the summer reading program, and of course, like you said, summer is the perfect time. They need to stay reading over the summer because that's the best time. If they don't read while they're on holiday, then their scores can diminish. So it was great over the summer. Everyone was signing up for summer reading. Well, now it's August. So we want people to continue coming into the reading. So we've got some great programs going on. Continuing on with this author tradition, Belle Isle Library this month, every Tuesday at the Belle Isle Library, we've got Jumpstart Your Novel Tuesday nights where people come in and kind of learn to jumpstart that novel everybody's been wanting to write. The goal is to write 30,000 words in August. So that's going to be a fun program going on.
It sounds like it. You all are so busy. I get the monthly magazine that your department puts out, and I'm just amazed every month at how many different things you're involved with.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I would have thought, coming from the outside 10 years ago, that people just went in and checked out a book, and that was kind of the end of the programming.
Yep.
But it's almost like that's a very small part of the program.
That is. I mean, we do, I was looking at the magazine. We have over 150 programs every month at all of our libraries. You know, we have 19 libraries all across Oklahoma County. And they range from music events. You know, later on this fall, we've got the Cimarron Opera coming. So if anyone's curious about opera, hey, this is a perfect time. All of our programs are free. Come to the library, learn a little bit about opera, you know, see if you like it or not. We've got music, we've got classical pianists, dramatic plays, and children reading to dogs. That's probably one of our most fun things that we have. Probably the most popular too. We get so many people come and attend that. You know, that's a great program. Just all kinds of things.
How can people learn more about these programs?
You go out to our website, which is www.metrolibrary.org. We've got a calendar of events right there. You could sort it by whatever particular library you want to go to, or you could just see whatever day you're interested in and just see what's going on that day.
I read an article just this past week about the continuing relationship between publishers and libraries as the digital revolution takes place in book publishing and magazine publishing.
Right.
How is the library going to evolve here in the next few years?
Well, we're always going to have physical books because that's never going to go away. But we are getting so many customers that love the ebook genre. It's just so easy for people to have their library card and be able to download a book from their home. Or the other day I was in the airport and I thought, oh, let me download a book before I leave. So I just went out to the library site, found a book and downloaded it. So it's just so convenient for people to do that. So we're always going to have those physical books, but we're getting to where we have so many of the ebooks too. Mm-hmm. And you know, more and more publishers are making those available. At first it was difficult. There was a difficult relationship. But now I think they're seeing there's no different relationship than a physical book than an electronic book. Mm-hmm. So, and everyone just, it's so easy and so convenient.
Okay, so if someone, say, has an iPad or maybe a mobile phone, how would they interact with the library to be able to download a book?
Well, you have to have your library card.
Okay.
So then you go out, we have a button on our website, and it's called eMedia. From there, you just go out to eMedia, you find the book that you want, and you just look, is it actually on the shelf, or do you have to put a hold on it? If it says borrow, you could just, it's like it's really there. You say borrow, you enter your library card, and it asks you what kind of format do you want? Do you have a Kindle, or do you have other? And of course, other's anything else. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you just check it out. You have to have one of the apps. It's a free app. It's called Overdrive. Or if you have a Kindle, you usually use your Kindle app. Or like I have an iPad, so I could use the Kindle app on my iPad, or I could use the Overdrive app, either one. And then it just downloads it directly to my iPad or my Kindle or my Nook or whatever, and it's automatically there.
And the process takes how long to download?
It's pretty instant. I would say it takes less than 20 seconds.
Right. And people may be intimidated by it at first, but if they go through the process, and I'm sure people can help them, once they get used to that process, it really can save them a lot of time and trouble.
It does. I saw a tweet actually on Twitter just today, and somebody said, I just downloaded my first ebook from Metro Library, and it was so easy. I thought, oh, that's perfect.
Kim Terry is the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Metropolitan Libraries. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And a reminder as we wind up this show on the Mayor's Magazine to support your local bookstore, support your local library, and support your local Oklahoma artist. We'll be back next month with the September 2013 show. Until then, I'm Mick Cornett, the Mayor of Oklahoma City, and I'll see you right here on the Mayor's Magazine.